So in the previous tutorial I showed you how to select data from a layer, but there is an easier way, and it is part of the representation of a layer. The second way is to simply represent only the bus stops from this layer using the Style tab. This tab is similar to symbology in ArcGIS. Select Categorized, column equal F class, click Classify, and then remove every other feature type except for bus stops. Now your map will only show the bus stops, however the other features still remain in the layers attributes table. And in the future you can choose to represent more or less of the classes. To remove these types, simply click Delete in the Style tab after you have selected them. We can also show their labels. Go to Labels tab and click Show Labels for this layer. Label with Select Name from the drop-down. I will show you later more details about the labeling. Let's see how it appears in the Map Composer. If we remove one of the layers, for example the background, we need to simply move to the left or right of the map with Move Item Content for the view to be updated. To select a background color for the map, go to Project Properties, General, Background Color. After you change the background color, you need to remove the current map and add the map again in the Composer. As an intermediate step, you can choose to export your map just to make sure it would look like you want it to look. In the Map Composer, click Composer, Export as PDF or JPG. If you want to use it later in Inkscape, you can choose to export it to SVG. We will export it to PDF first. We might want the label of the bus stops to be smaller. Double-click on Bus Stop, Labels, Text. You can change the size, the type of the text. Some labels are on top of the actual bus stop symbol, so we can change their placement by Placement Offset from Point and introduce a value in millimeters. Before you save again, make sure you close the current map view in the PDF viewer, otherwise it will not save. We can also choose a symbology for the roads. Right-click Properties, Style. Since we are dealing with free and crowdsourced data, we cannot know for sure that the roads have been correctly categorized, so we need to check. I think it is easier to visually check. So first let's categorize the data. You can read in the wiki OSM what each category signifies. Please go to the link wiki.openstreetmap.org/wiki/map_features. Since we want to show the roads, we will need primary link, secondary link, residential, tertiary link, trunk link, and motorway for main representational purposes. This means that these are the primary roads which are very important for a map. For secondary representation purposes, we will need also footways, unclassifieds, service, track, path, living street. Basically, since volunteers with various degree of knowledge and satellite image reading abilities have digitized this data, it will have errors in categories for sure. What I do is simply show all the roads for main representational purposes with one size and color, and the secondary representational purposes objects with a different color or size. It's a big generalization, and these roads are purely for orientation purposes. The main layer in our map will be the bike or the bus routes. My recommendation is to check visually each road if it has the correct type. Hopefully you know a thing or two about the street network in that city. You will need to label the streets as well, the lakes and the rivers. You will have many labels, so if your map is filled with labels, you might want to reduce the area of representation. Simply have a map of the city center only, or reduce the number of layers labeled. But the user of the map will need points of interest, so he can orientate himself. Alternatively, you can also place labels manually, which gives you more freedom to choose which labels you will place. This way you have the freedom where to put them and make sure they don't overlap. I will teach you how to put manual labels in Inkscape in the next tutorial. As you can see, the railway does not look very nice, since different tracks merge and diverge from one. We will need to do a trick to make the change more smooth. Double-click on the railway layer, Style, Advanced, Symbol Levels, Enable Symbol Levels, click OK. So now there's one thick continuous line for the track. Much better! You can label and style the lakes and rivers also, with a nice bluish color. Since the name for the rivers does not get displayed, we will get more names from the line shapefile. To make sure the line and polygon type layers have the same color, copy the color from one of the layer and paste it to the other layer like this. Click Properties, Style, Color, click the drop down arrow, copy color. Then in the other layer, follow the same steps, but click on Paste Color. If you find the Lakes Rivers polygon type layer has rivers that are too wide, you can choose the river line type layer and represent that as wide as you want by styling it. But make sure you select the lakes from the Lakes Rivers polygon type layer as a separate layer. As you can see, making a beautiful looking map in GIS is hard. Labels are overlapping, sometimes there are more symbols than we actually need, and we have not even drawn the bus routes layer yet. So my solution for the bus map was to do it in a different way. Similar to a metro underground map, for those who are familiar, where we only care about the bus routes and the bus stops, and less about the roads. You could continue with this map and simply not show labels for streets, or you can redo it in my way in the next tutorial. The current map, we will still use it for the bike routes map, where the street network is important but the bus stops are not. So we will continue the project for the moment with the bike routes. To label only the important layers, go to Properties for the roads layer, Labels, Rule-based labeling, click the plus sign, description equals important roads. Click on the three dots button to the right of the filter row. In expression field type F-class equals, click all unique values to see which values to choose. To have more values labeled the same, type F-class equals, for example, residential, or F-class equals primary, or F-class equals primary link, and so on, until you have written all the classes that you want to represent with the same style. Since more segments are from the same street, there could be duplicate labels, so please go to Rendering, Feature Options, and tick Merge Connected Lines to avoid duplicates. So you will need the bike routes layer you created earlier. Hopefully you have found a good up-to-date source for the bike tracks. I will simply use the data from OpenStreetMap. If you want to do this as I do, you have two options. You can select the cycling routes from the roads layer, or you can duplicate the roads layer by right-click on the layer and select Duplicate, and only represent from the duplicated layer the cycling tracks. Since I have already showed you how to select in the previous lesson, I will take the duplicate layer option now. The duplicate function creates a new layer that has the same data as the original one. It is not stored on the drive, but only in QGIS as a temporary file. If you modify anything in the duplicate, it will have an effect in the original and vice versa, so they are still linked. There is no documentation I know of for this function, so it is more of a personal experience. We will not modify any of the features, we only want to represent the cycling tracks. You have to make the duplicate file visible, so tick the square to the left of it and drag and drop it above the roads layer. You can rename the duplicate by right-click and rename. To only show the cycle path, click Delete All from the Style tab, click Classify while having the F class in the Categorized column, and remove all the other features except for the cycleway. To modify a color of a feature, right-click Properties, Style, left-click the arrow on the right of the color, choose Color. You can put here HTML notation or input the RGB, SHV values, or simply pick a color to the left, either by option of color wheel, recent color, pick a color. If I want a map that has all the bike routes in it, I could zoom to the extent of the bike layer. This works best if you selected the bike tracks and created a new layer for the bike routes. If you made the bike layer by creating a duplicate, you will get to the extent of the whole area of interest as the first polygon created in lesson 4, unless you select only the bike routes and click on the button for zoom to selected features. You can also decide which area is more suited for your purpose. Maybe you only want to show the bike routes in the city center if the city is really big. Maybe you want to show all the bike routes. In the future you might learn WebGIS or making an app for mobile users. Obviously you will need all the data there, because users can easily pan around. However, on a printed map there is the map boundary limit. In the Map Composer you will need to put the map scale, legend, a title and a north arrow. Please join me in the next tutorial to show you how to do this. Thank you for watching this tutorial. All the best. Goodbye. We have already used some of the features of the Map Composer. And the reason I have done this is because it is easier to set the composer gradually for the purpose you have in your mind, and to make sure the layers are shown according to your desire and to the target audience of the map. Now I will show you how to add the legend, a title, the scale bar and the north arrow. First, we will start with the title. You need a catchy title, so why not make it a question? Like, where can you cycle in Oxford? Or, are you ready to use your bike? Find out where to cycle in Oxford. The title is like any other label you can create. And you will create it with add a label. You can use this feature if you want to add any label representing some points of interest, some cultural landmarks, like theater, church, airport names, rail stations. Maybe even if you see a label for a street or river is missing, you can place it manually. You can change the size of the title by dragging the corners. You can see in the item properties the current text. Simply click there and modify it. To change the font, click on the font. You can change the alignment, the position, you can rotate it, or create a frame around it and a background color. It's also possible to lock an item so that it becomes immovable. Therefore, you will not be able to modify it unless you unlock it. This can be useful if you're doing small changes to one of the features and don't want to make accidental changes to another. Simply go in the Items tab and tick the lock for the desired layer. Now we will create the legend. Click the Add a Legend button, then click on the map where you want it to be shown. As you can see, it is a huge legend. This is because QGIS shows all the elements in every layer that is in the Layers panel, even if you have not used them. We will be able to edit this legend either by removing the layers from the Layers panel or inside the Map Composer by going to Items Properties and untick the Auto Update. Now you are able to edit every layer. For example, we can remove the layers we are not using. Now, as you can see, the roads layer has every type of road in the legend. We don't actually need that. If you made a color or size distinction between each type, you will need each different type. Otherwise, you may need just two of them, one for the main type of road and one for the secondary type, because we made a size distinction. Residential and any car designated road are with 0.5 points, while footpaths are with 0.26 points in size. So in the legend we only need two entries. It would have been best if QGIS had an option to group them. Instead, we will need to delete all the types except for one of each type. To rename them, click on the type you want to rename and then click Edit Properties. Best practice is to put the layers that aid in orientation first on the legend, like contour area, rivers, lakes, roads, and the end ones should be the layer which is the theme of this map, bike routes. Use the up and down arrow to move them inside the legend. You can also edit the names that appear in the legend. It is not good to have a name like roads_OX. Please also change the name of the legend and its font. If you have many layers, you can put them on two or more columns. Same as for the title, you can create a frame, a background, or you can lock it in place. There is no place that is best, but try to minimize the features covered and to put it in one of the corners. Next, it is the scale. Now for the people that do not know this, a scale is a graphic representation that makes it easy for people to measure distances on a map. There are different types of scales. They can even show as simple numbers, like 1:10,000. Graphic scale bars are easier for people to imagine how much they have to travel to reach a certain place. Simply click on the Add a new scale bar. Items Properties allows you to modify some of its features. Style, make it a double box. Units, choose meters. You can choose whether you want to represent some units before 0 for measurement purposes. You can choose the number of units to the right of 0. There is no standard way of showing it, but you would need at least 2 units to the right of 0. You can change colors, create a frame and a background color. To create a north arrow, it is a bit harder, simply because there are no standard north arrows like you would find in other GIS software. But you can import an image, which can be a SVG file, or you can create a new arrow inside of the composer. It is unconventional but more creative. Now you have reached the end of the Map Composer. You can export it as a PDF, image or SVG if you want to modify it further in Inkscape or Illustrator. I will show you what Inkscape can do in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching this tutorial. All the best. Goodbye.